So recently we received so many questions regarding the email, how to make the email admissible. So that triggered me to do the webinar on this particular subject. And one of the biggest challenge with the email is that email is the document which is the most unreliable. It can easily be forged, and it is one of the most difficult to prove in the code. And why it is difficult to prove in the code? So there are two reasons. Reason number one is, in case of email, original email is always on the web. So basically, you can never file a primary evidence. You always have a secondary evidence. Second is, even if you download the primary evidence into an email client like Outlook Express or something like that, it is very easy to fabricate it. It's something like a child play. So if there is an email in a Outlook, so you can change the person who is the sender, the person who is the receiver, the date and time of the email, content of the email, and also the attachment. So I have come across number of cases. So one of the interesting case I will share with you. One of my client has approached me that in one of the case which he has filed in the high court, his opposite party has filed the email with the attachment, and that is the same mail which was sent by my client, but the attachment which was sent by my client was something different from the attachment which was relied by the opposite party. Now, interesting part of it was that both the parties were having the same email, but the different attachments. So when my client explained me that how he has sent the mail, we analyzed the Outlook Express, we did forensic on it, we find that you can easily change the attachment. So then we can file an application in the High Court that this particular party who was relying upon that particular email with the attachment should be directed to produce the original Outlook Express, or he should give us the PST file for the forensic. And what happened thereafter? On the next date of hearing, that party has filed the reply that his laptop is stolen. So, in fact, he has forged that mail, but in order to destroy the evidence, they have removed it. Because one of the challenge which comes with respect to the email is, no doubt, we can keep the original mail into the webmail account, but it may be easy, it may be comfortable, it may be practicable for a individual person, but when we come to the corporate level, practically it is something which you cannot do. For example, even if you are maintaining the email with 365 or Gmail or any other service provider, so when you are maintaining the data in a corporate environment, the data is huge. So if you want to keep the backup, which is 3 year old, 4 year old, or even more than that, then again you have to pay the extra money to preserve that particular data. So that's why the original webmail is not available, and proving it from the Outlook Express has the two type of challenges. If I'm a complainant, then the challenge which would be for me is how to prove the mail, and more important, its authenticity. But if I'm on the opposite side, then how to rebut that particular mail and the attachment or any other document which is relied upon by the parties. So let me share my PPT. So what we are going to discuss in this session is the challenge to the email authenticity. So which is one of the biggest challenge during the court proceeding. Second, email forensic. Email forensic is very simple. So I will explain it in a very brief, and you can do on your own. It does not require any further expertise except when the forensic is to be done for the Outlook Express. So it is something easy which you can do. We will also understand how the email works, how we can trace the email source to find out its authenticity. So then we will discuss the original header as well as the header of the fake email. So we'll make the comparative analysis by which you would be able, even by just physically looking on the header, whether the email is genuine or fake. Then the requirement of a certificate under section 65B and authenticity of the email. So, if we discuss about what are the challenges which will come into the court, during the trial, but will emerge as a challenge. So there are few categories, though they are not the limited one. First challenge which always comes is what is the origin of the email and who is the sender. Now both are different, right? So that means whether it is coming from a particular email ID or not. So that is the first component. Second component is who have sent it. So there are two challenges with respect to the mail. Next challenge, which I have seen in number of cases, that the party refutes the email. They simply say that it is forged. Now see, consider the situation that you have produced the email in the court and the opposite party challenge that it is forged. Now, you have not also preserved the original webmail. Then how you are going to meet that challenge? And if you are not able to meet that challenge, even the opposite party can prosecute you for filing the forged mail. So that means if even the mail may be genuine, but because you have not preserved the original webmail, it would be a challenge of frivolous prosecution also. Then IP address of the sender matches. So now what has happened? Number of service providers, what they start doing is they are sharing one IP address with the number of user, number of subscribers. For example, when now Airtel is distributing the IP address, so they distribute one IP address to the 5 or 10%. So they are binded by the their uh, gateway. Then they bind it with the port number, right? So that means even if for particular email ID you go to the IP address and IP address is allocated to 10%, and for example, now if you presume all the 10% are accessing the Gmail, or even 5 are accessing the Gmail, so then specifying which party has actually sent the mail may not be feasible to find. Another is that we have discussed earlier also that the party accepts the mail but challenges about the attachment. And the bigger challenge which now we are facing is the email where the IP address is scoped using the proxy server. So these are some of the challenges which you may face during the trial. So here we need to keep in mind that if I am proving, I need to keep all these points in mind while submitting the data. So it's also very important to understand what data we need to submit in the code for proving the email, whether simple printout is sufficient or we need to give the email in the electronic form, whether we need to give the header. So these are some of the issues which we are going to discuss during this session. Now coming to the email forensic, so basically it is very simple. It can be done manually by doing the email forensic. You can identify what is the source system domain name, its IP address, who is the sender, what is the date and time of the sending of the email, and whether the content of the email are correct or not. Now coming to the question of recovery of the deleted email. So when we talk about the web mail, for example, I have the email in my Gmail account and some of the mails are deleted. So whether they can be recovered? So the answer is no. Because when I'm accessing the email on the web mail, basically I'm accessing the original mail which is being preserved on the server of the Gmail. So once deleted, you cannot recover it. But we can recover the email, which is recover the deleted mail if they are being preserved into the Outlook Express or any other email client. And we can also recover, locate the source of the email and also its sender. But when we talk about the location, we need to take that information from the service provider. We cannot do on our own until the IP address is a static IP address. Now, in order to understand it in proper perspective, first we need to understand what is the path which is being followed by the email. So here I have taken an example of an email sent by the person Naresh to the person Ram. Right? So this is one of the examples. Please be with me. After this session, you would be so much comfortable with email that you can prove any type of the mail in the code, or even if you want to revert. So let us first take an example of a letter. So I have taken one example where a letter is sent by NLU Bangalore to police headquarters in Delhi. So how that letter will go? So you can see the green boxes where I've mentioned regarding the path which would be taken by the letter. So if a letter originates from NLU Bangalore, from NLU Bangalore it will go to the GPO Bangalore. From GPO Bangalore it will go to the GPO Delhi. Then it will go to the police headquarters Delhi. So this is the path which is being followed by simple letter sent through post and which every one of us knows. In the same way, email works. Now we are taking the example of a person Naresh who have sent the email to the Ram. Now Naresh has email ID as naresh3151 at the rate redemail.com. So it passes through the Redmail server. So when Naresh sends the mail, his mail will originate from his laptop. From his laptop, it will go to the Rediff server. Then from the internet, when the data travels, then it will go to the Gmail server, and then ultimately it will go to the RAM. So that is the same path which is being followed by a simple letter. Right? Now we are coming to the little bit more technical, but you must understand it. So if we go by the foreign judgment, you will find so many judgment because the entire fabrication took place at a technical level also. So there are two protocols. One is called as a SMTP protocol, simple mail transfer protocol. Then there are POP3 and IMAP4. So SMTP is for sending the email, and POP3 and IMAP is for receiving or download the email. For example, now when the Naresh will send the mail, so during the process of sending, so what is the process of sending is from Naresh to Rediff and then Rediff to Gmail. So till Gmail, it is a process of sending. And when Ram download the mail, it is a process of retrieving. So sending of the mail can be done using the SMTP server. So from you can see in this slide, from Naresh to Rediff server, the email will go using SMTP server. Then from Rediff to Gmail also, again using the SMTP protocol. And from Gmail server to RAM, it will be downloaded by using the POP3 and IMAP4. Now, how does both make a difference? In POP3, when you download the mail, there is no mail in the web account. In IMAP, when you download the one copy of the mail would continue to be in your webmail account. So that is the difference between two. But you must use IMAP for the purpose of the evidence. The reason is now when we are using multiple devices, the same mail is being downloaded on my mobile, on my iPad, on my other devices, then also into my webmail. So when you use the IMAP4, your original mail will remain intact on the web server, and you can download the mail into any of the devices. And when you download it on the multiple devices, then all the mails will be the original copies by virtue of explanation 2 to the section 62 of the Evidence Act. Now coming to the email protocol. So till now we have taken a very simple example that how mail from NLU Bangalore travels to GPO, the police headquarters at Delhi. So that is an example of simple letter. Then we have given a simple example how email works. Now we are coming to the how practically it works and what is the complexity involved. Now we are taking the same example where let me first explain using the same example of a letter. Now when a letter originates from NLU Bangalore, it goes to the GPO Bangalore and it comes to the GPO Delhi, but it travels through various places like Bhopal, Nagpur, whatever places which are coming in the way, right? So that is the path which is taken by the letter. Similar way, when the email travel from Naresh to Ram, then first it will go to the Rediff server, but then it will go to the other server also. So there may be number of servers through which it passes before actually reaching the Gmail server. So that would be the path which is actually taken by that particular email, and that entire path would be reflected in the header. So that means if a mail has come from the Naresh to the person Ram and it have traveled through the server of Rediff, then to the another server, then to the Gmail, then all these servers would be reflected in the header in the same sequence. So that is another way by which, by checking the sequence of the server, we can also make an opinion whether the email is forged or genuine. So we will discuss about that also by actually analyzing a header. Now, for the purpose of how to find the header, so the best way is that you can go on the Google, you can find out how to look upon the header in the particular email account. So location of the header may vary depending upon the service provider. For example, in case of the Gmail, I have mentioned the path where you can find, click and you can find out the header of a particular email ID, right? So here you have a drop menu. You can see in this diagram, you have a drop menu, and there on where you will click on the show original, you will get the header. Similarly, the location in the other email account like Hotmail and Rediff Mail, the location may be different, but all the paths are available there on the Google. So you can easily go to the Google and you can find out the path for a header in a specific email account. Now, how to analyze the email header? So now what we have discussed here in this particular slide, that how the data moves over the internet, how that particular email follow a particular path from which we can also find out whether the email is genuine or false. So I have extracted the header. Header is into 2 pages, right? Another thing which is very important is that when the person Naresh send the email to the RAM, when entire path is written, so the path which would be shown in the header would be from bottom to top. So at the bottom it will show the Naresh, then it will show the Rediff server, then the next server, then next server, then Gmail, and ultimately the RAM. So we always read the header from bottom to top. So now this is the particular header. So it is into 2 pages. So I am starting from page 2 from the bottom. So see, in the bottom we have the sender naresh@rediffmail.com. It says received from unknown. So this is the IP address. Who has received? By rediff.com. So that means the person who has sent has IP address as 171.50.146.253, right? So because it is the user of the Rediff itself, so the first server would always be the server to which the email belongs. For example, if I am sending you the mail from my Gmail account, here the first server would be only of Gmail. So that's very important. That is the way to find out whether the email is forged or not. Second is, when particular email is sent, the first server to which the email belongs would create a message ID, and that would be unique. And that message ID would only be created of the email ID which you are using, from which you are sending the mail. Then coming to the next part, then we see that there is an entire path, a Google server. So it has directly come from the Rediff to Google. So there is no server in between. So it also shows the address of the Google server, mx.google.com. Then we have the entire their SMTP IDs and etc. And other details by which we can authenticate the server also. Then it shows who has received, from whom it is received, and by whom it is received. So entire path is there. So let us understand this in quite detail. So from the bottom we can see the person sender is the Naresh. So his email ID is mentioned. So from this particular email ID which is mentioned into the header, you can always verify whether the email ID from which the mail has come is the genuine or not. Because the mail ID which is mentioned in the email may be different, may be spoofed. But when you look into the header, it would be the genuine mail ID only. In the header, it is not possible to spoof the first mail ID which would be shown at the bottom of the header. Second line which we have seen in the header is received from unknown. So this is the IP address by Rediff mail. Now mail is sent by the person Naresh who have an email ID of the Rediff. So the first server would be of the Rediff mail only. Now it has been received by the Rediff. Then the time, date and time have been mentioned, which is into the UTC. So you need to convert this into the GMT. So you need to add 5:30 hour to this particular time. So that you need to keep in mind that the time may be into the UTC, right? Or International Standard Time. You need to convert that time into the local time, because otherwise IP address information which you get from the service provider may not be correct one. Then who has received? So this is the mail ID which is who on which the mail have been received. So it belongs to the Gmail. Then message ID. So it's very important. First thing, very important thing you must keep in mind is message ID would be unique. Number one. Number two, message ID would be created by the server from where the email has been produced. First server. And the message ID itself is the date and time stamp. For example, now you see in this message ID, this is your date, 6th July 2016. Then the next part is your time. Then it is a unique number. So it is a combination of date and time and number. And now even using this particular message ID, you can make a correspondence with the Rediff also. It would be unique. So you can tell the, if you require any information from Rediff, you can tell the Rediff that this is the message ID. Please preserve all the data, or please give us all the data relating to this particular message ID. So message ID would always be unique. So this problem comes when there is series of mail and with a gap of few seconds. So then the best way to collect the information, to preserve it by the way of the court order, is to use the message ID instead of giving the time. Then now the last part of the header, which we have earlier also discussed, the message is received from rediffmail.com. So it is mentioning to the Rediff server, IP address of the Rediff server. So that means from that particular header, we can not only find out which is the server, we can also verify it by locating the server on the internet. So who has received it? By MX Google. So it clearly shows that the mail is received, originated from Rediff, and it has come to the MX Google. So then the Google information is also provided here, right? Then delivered to the last part of the header, which is basically the beginning of the header. It will deliver to this email account. So by now from this email ID header, it's quite clear that which is the source email ID, which is the first server on which the mail ID has been received, which is the message ID, then it has gone to which server and which email account. So the entire this information is automatically appended by the server. On this information, the sender has no control. Though in some of the cases when we have investigated various frauds, where even the header have been manipulated, they are able to append some information into this header, but they are not able to rectify or remove the basic information which is attached by the server. For example, when we are talking about all this information, so kindly appreciate. So when this person Naresh will send the email, it will come to the Rediff mail. This particular server, now which is not under the control of the Naresh, this particular server will create the message ID, will capture the IP address of the Naresh, will mention its own information. So if we come to the next server will also append its own information. So that means this information is being appended by the independent server which are on the internet, and this information cannot be manipulated by the sender. So source of the IP address, now we have find out which is the IP address. So that is our IP address is from where the mail has come is 171.50.146.253. Now to whom that IP address belongs is very easy to find out. Just go on the Google. In the Google bar, you can search for the whois.com, and there are a number of websites from where when you put your IP address, you will get the information about the service provider. So to that extent, this information can be collected by you directly without any interference of the police or court. But when we now need to find out that if the information is the Bharti, this IP address is of the Bharti, who is the actual user, and for that purpose, we need to get that information from the service provider. And service provider will give you the information only either by way of the direction of the police or by way of the direction of the court. So if it is a police case, police can always get it retrieved. But if it is a case you are fighting, like a defamation case in the court, then you need to give a notice first to the service provider to preserve this information. Secondly, you need to get a order from the court directing the service provider, please provide this user of this IP address. So analysis of the header we have done. So in brief, how this data moves, and you can also go on this website cyberforensic.in, where they have given a tool, and you can put the header in the tool. So we have put the same header in the tool, and what we got. So this is the user. It is his IP address. Then the mail has come to the Rediff server. Then this is the time. Then it is the address of the Google server. Then it has come to the receiver. So entire path even you can cross verify by using this utility on the website cyberforensic.in. So it is a website of government department. You can use this result even for the purpose of your evidence in the court of law. Now coming to the analysis of the fake email. So now we have sent the same mail using one of the website. The name of the website is emkei.cz. So this is one website. You can go on this website and you can send the fake mail to anyone, right? So now this is a header of a fake mail. So again, the mail has been sent by the person Naresh, who has the mail ID naresh@rediffmail.com, to the person Ram, who has the mail ID cyber.nk@gmail.com, but it has not been sent from the Rediff server. So let us see the now header of the fake mail. So let us come to the bottom. Again, it shows the same thing from where the email originated, right? Now see the first server. So in the original header, we have seen the first server was of the Rediff mail. But here it shows the first server of emkei.cz. Then it says it is received by mx.google.com because it is received by the Gmail. And here again you see the message ID is also created by the emkei.cz. So the moment you find that the first server is not Rediff mail, that is sufficient to draw the inference that the mail is the forged one. So again I have analyzed the same mail header. So it shows the person who has sent the mail is so and so, received from emkei.cz, not by rediffmail.com. This on its own is sufficient to draw the inference that it is a fake mail received by mx.google.com. It is a SMTP ID of the Google server. So as far as the recipient is concerned, there is no dispute. Now you see the message ID. Again, the message ID is created by emkei.cz, which need to be created by the rediffmail.com if the mail have been originated from the Rediff. So server of the Rediff is missing, and in its place we can see the server of emkei. So which clearly shows that the mail has not come from the actual origin. It is not an authenticated mail. It is a fake and forged email. Spoof mail can be also be spoofed in a number of ways. Open relay. So now there are so many servers on the internet where they are the open SMTP. So that means if you want to send the mail by writing through the Linux command and also using the various utility, you can send the mail directly without any authentication. So that means if I have a mail ID naresh3151@rediffmail.com, through the open relay I can send the mail even without a password. So that's how easy to fabricate that particular mail. Second is compromised system. So if a person hack your account, then he can send. That is the second way. Third is self-owned email server. So if I have my own email server, like so many private companies have, so they can use their own SMTP server for sending the mail without any authentication. Then proxy server. So they are available on the internet, by which we can change the root of the email. So that's how we can manipulate. So we'll come to that part. Hijacked account. So again, that is account which is again a compromised account. So how proxy server works. Let us say the same example where the person Naresh have sent the email to Ram. Now I want as a Naresh that my IP address should not be reflected into the header. So just here, what here I am going to do is spoof my IP, right? So what the Naresh has done, Naresh has accessed some of the proxy website which may be located in foreign country. Through the proxy server, he has accessed his Rediff account. Then the mail has followed the same path. The only difference would be when you will read the header, the IP address which will come of the proxy server. So that means if the proxy server is located in China and I'm sending you the mail from Delhi, IP address which you will get is only of China. So that's the way how we impersonate, how we manipulate, how we create the proxy IP so that whenever we are sending any mail, we cannot be located. Now there is another problem which is coming is, for example, now if the Airtel is distributing the IP address, and now since there is a shortage of IP address, so what they are doing, they are allocating one particular IP to large number of persons. So it may be 5%, it may be 10%, and in that particular case, these IP address are binded to number of users with the port binding, right? Now the problem which comes is when you get a IP address and you get sort that information from ISP, Airtel. For example, if we take the same case where the IP was 171 or something, and if we write a letter to the, if police write a letter to the ISP that who is the user of this particular IP, the Bharti will give the name of 5 to 10% who are using that particular IP at the very same time. So then for getting the exact person who is using, you need the port number. And port number may not be available in the email header. So that means in such cases, it may not be possible to find who is the user of that particular IP address, who is the user of that particular email account, or who is the person who has sent the email. So that is one of the big risks which have recently originated because all the service providers are using this type of practices which are illegal because it allows a criminal or it allows the obstruction into the investigation and police may not be able to find who is the exact person who has sent the mail. So now there are a number of tools which are also available free of cost that you can use for analyzing the header. The simple thing what you need to do, go to your email, locate the header, copy the header and put them into these tools. Again, whatever we have discussed, what I have manually explained to you, the same process would be done using these tools and you can find the same information, the source IP address, number one. Number two, server from which the mail have originated. Again, by looking on into the information or the output which are generated by these tools, you can always find out whether the mail is genuine or false. Webmail versus email client. So in the email client, like when we are using the Outlook Express, Microsoft, Edura or something such, the mail is actually downloaded into your email client. For example, in case of Microsoft Outlook, it creates a PST file. So all the mail would come into your PST file, whether you are sending or whether you are receiving. But when you are using the web mail, for example, this is a laptop and I am sending a mail to you. So whether there would be any evidence of the mail in this particular laptop, answer is no. Because I am opening my Explorer and in the Explorer I am opening online my email account and I am sending the mail. So in this particular computer, there would be no information what mail I have sent. The maximum information which would be available in this laptop would be that I have accessed this particular email, that is maximum your gmail.com at a particular time. So there would be a web cache space relating to the Gmail and nothing more than that. So that means from that particular laptop, it cannot be find out which mail has been sent. But if we are using the Outlook Express, we can find out from the forensic examination of that PST file. In case of the email client, email can be deleted and deleted mail can also be recovered. email can be manipulated. As I told you earlier, you can manipulate the name of sender, you can manipulate the name of receiver, you can manipulate the date and time, you can manipulate the content of email, you can manipulate the attachment of the email. So even you can manipulate the header also there. So when email is being produced from the Outlook Express, I would always recommend that if you want to prove it, always get it forensically examined from a company so that later on that challenge can be met. For example, if you are proving a mail from Outlook Express and I show to the code that it is very simple to manipulate the header or the other information, probably proving the mail for you would be difficult. So it's always better that we should get it forensically examined, or in a case when we have the other corroborative material. For example, I have sent you the mail and I am proving the mail, but later on you have sent me the reply to the mail, right? So when there is any other information by which we can corroborate, it's okay. Otherwise, it would always be in your interest to get it forensically examined. Proving the email. So now the very important question comes: when we go to the code to prove the email, what information we need to submit to the code? So the information is whether we should give it in a form of printout, or whether we should give in an electronic form, or whether we should give the header or not, and what are the other things which we need to provide. So first I tell you, two things are mandatory. Number one, copy of the email and certificate under section 65. So that you have to give. Other information which I would recommend you should give is number one, the header. Next fourth thing which I would always recommend, that you must give electronic copy of the FIR. So electronic copy of the email. So you should download the email electronically, write it in a CD, and should submit the CD before the court. Now the reason is why. In one of the cases when I was doing the cross examination and witness was proving the email where there was only a printout, and when I asked the question to him, is it correct that this content of the email can be typed in a Word file? So his answer was yes, it can be done. So next my question was, is it correct that you cannot show the original webmail? Again his answer was yes. My third question was, it is correct to suggest that you have fabricated the mail to create a fake evidence to manipulate the evidence? And he was not having any answer to it. The reason is that inference which I am drawing from his answer is the probable inference. So you need to keep in mind. So when you are giving the electronic copy of the email, so then that particular question that it can be typed in a Word file would not be relevant. So proving becomes very easy. So you must keep in mind to give that particular email always in the electronic form. Now coming to the original mail. So original mail, in case of webmail it is not possible, but in case of Outlook Express you can always give the PHP file. Then it would be admissible. No certificate under section 65 is required. It would always be always recommended to get it authenticated by way of forensic examination. Now also there is another way by which you can do. Even if you are downloading from the webmail account, you can make a screen video of the entire process to show it to the court that actually it has been downloaded and not have been fabricated. Again, everything would be the contextual, depending upon the challenge which you may have, depending upon the stake in the case which you may have, depending upon the burden of proof. For example, in case of criminal, burden is strict, so you need to use every method to prove it beyond doubt. But if it is if it is a civil case, then you can do it by preponderance of probabilities also. So in case of secondary evidence, admissibility certificate under section 65B you have to give. Authenticity would be a challenge. So the best way which I would recommend to you is preserve the webmail if it is possible. And at the time when the cross-examination is going in the court, and if there is any question which comes from the defense, any question which comes from the opposite side regarding forgery of the mail, you should be ready before the court to open your email account and to show to the court that it is the genuine mail is here. So that if you are ready with that particular reply, you would be able to prove that particular email beyond doubt. Preservation of original, now it is a mandatory. So now in the judgment of Arjun Pandita Rao, which is the latest judgment, the Supreme Court clearly have stated that two situations. If a person have uh, given a certificate under section 65B but failed to secure, so that means you have given a copy, you have given a 65B but you did not preserve the original. Court has stated opposite side cannot verify the authenticity. Second is you have given a evidence but you have not given a certificate, and you give the certificate after the data is destroyed. So in both the cases, the court has stated that you cannot prove the authenticity because the opposite party cannot verify. So the exact word is that the opposite party cannot verify the authenticity of the data. So in such case, the question which comes by way of the cross-examination in the court is, can you produce the original evidence? So probably if you have not done so, your answer would be no. And the next suggestion would be, is it correct that without original, authenticity of the message cannot be verified by the court? If you have not preserved the original, your answer would be yes, it is correct. Then who can not give the certificate under section 65B? Person who is not into the possession of that particular original email account or original PST file, he cannot give the certificate under section 65B. When certificate cannot be given once the email is destroyed. Email admissibility. Now the question is, we have discussed the path which will be taken by the email. It will be the user, then it will be the ISP. Then the question is, who will give the certificate under section 65B of the Evidence Act. So here we have a presumption under section 88A of the Evidence Act, and this presumption, how it works. So you can see now this presumption says, now first let us come to the path. Now the person Naresh sending the mail. From Naresh, mail come to the Reddit, then mail come to the Gmail, then it come to the RAM. So this is the path. Now presumption under section 88 says that the data from point A to point B is presumed to be correct. So when there is a presumption of correctness from point A to point B, then we do not require any certificate either from Reddit or Gmail. So the certificate can be given by the person Naresh, or certificate can be given by the person Ram. But this is a may presumption, it can be rebutted. So such presumption would be a challenge, particularly when the party is using its own email server. So that means if the email server which is being used is the independent one, court can always draw the presumption. But if it is coming from its own server, for example, if there is a company Tata, they have their own email server, then in such case they can manipulate the email from that particular server. So that presumption can always be rebutted. Now coming to the email header, section 7 of the Information Technology Act makes it mandatory to have preserve the metadata. So as per practice in foreign countries, email is always filed along with the header, which constitutes the metadata of the email. So that means if you are not preserving the header and you are not filing it with the in the court with your email, then you are taking one of the risks, that is non-compliance of section 7 of the IT Act, which itself makes your data inadmissible because then it is not recognized by the law. Now, number of cases which we have received recently. So one of the cases I want to discuss with you is, in number of cases what the parties have done. For example, what the wife has done, wife has accessed the account of the husband, taken the email evidence, then produced subsequently in the court. And similarly, in number of cases we have done, it has been done by the husband. So these would be the illegally acquired evidence. But now there is a recent judgment of Delhi High Court where the court has stated that even though the evidence is illegally acquired, still it would be admissible in the court of law. Though the person who is adopting the illegal method to obtain the information would be liable to be prosecuted for illegality. So now even such emails are admissible in court of law and can become basis for the final judgment or decree. So any questions you have on this? So now you can unmute yourself. If any of you have any question, we can discuss. And even otherwise, you can always mail me the question, or you can put on
Hello, sir. Sir, I have a question. Sir, can a sender of a email can look for the header which he have sent?
Sir, I think you have muted yourself. Your voice is not coming. Neeraj sir.
So in case of sent mail, you will not find the header from the side of the sender. But in one or two service provider, I have seen that they are providing the header, but that header is very much elementary. Elementary. So normally that header itself is not sufficient to prove that whether the mail have been sent or actually delivered.
So, sir, in some of the cases, I don't remember the citation and the name of the cases. The court has held that even the notices which are served through email are valid. So, how can we rectify that the email has been sent and received by the person to whom the notice has been served?
See, not only in case of email, but also in case of the WhatsApp. Now, there was a recent judgment of the Supreme Court where the court have stated that when they have been sent from the WhatsApp, they are valid in law. But in WhatsApp, you have the two click by which you can find out that the opposite person have read it. But again, also the WhatsApp message can also be manipulated. So till now, the actual proposition in the court is that court are allowing them the service through email and WhatsApp in addition to the existing channel. For example, you are making the service through the physical medium, then you are using the WhatsApp and you are using the email also. So that are not being a sole medium for sending it. So they are being used in addition to the other mode of service.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Vikas Chaldan. As far as the scoop emails are concerned, can we approve the state server for the getting the concerned IP of the person who has committed the crime?
Yes, you can get it from the header. You can get it the IP address of the person who has forged it, and then by getting the information from the service provider, either through police or court, you can always prosecute him because that is an offence under section 66C of the IT Act.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
That is a standalone offence. Yes.
Uh,
Anyone
Hi,
else?
hi, sir. My name is Sai Sujit.
Yes. Yeah.
So my question is actually to eradicate all this issue, mitigate this issue. So why can't we have when we are sending an email attachment, right? Why can't we protect with a password so that other user will give the same password and then download the attachments, right?
You may share it with the in a particular or specific case in that way, but when you are actually doing the correspondence in the routine, probably that adopting that procedure may not be easy. So what the procedure which is being used and which would be a full proof and which would be also easy to prove in the court of law is that whenever you send any mail to anyone, you always keep 1 or 2% into CC, right?
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah, correct.
that means if the opposite party say that I have not received the email, you can get it proof from the person who is into the CC because he is also a party to the mail. So you will see in a business practice, in a business correspondence, it is a standard practice to keep 1 or 2% always into CC. So what they are doing, you go by the commercial mail, they will always keep 1% as a CC from their own company of the sender, and they will also always keep 2% as a recipient. So that means there would be two witness in addition to the sender and receiver through which you can prove it in the court of law.
Okay.
So the service is being provided by the Gmail authorities. You can send a mail and you can provide a mobile number. Once he opens the mail, that he has to confirm the OTP while opening the mail. Once he submits that OTP, means that he has gone through the mail.
No, but it may not be possible for you to prove it because if I am accessing my own email account where I require the OTP, how that information would be available to you? That information would not be available to you if you are a opposite party. So that is
Yes,
not
sir.
going to work. So the best way we always recommend to our client is that you must use the multiple channel to share the information if it is sensitive. For example, if you are sharing banking information, then you can use the more than one email, or you can use the physical medium also, or you can use the chat option also. So you can always write in your contract that in case of sensitive information, the communication should be done through more than one mode of communication.
Communications.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the best way to do it. Because forensic support may also not be available every time. And secondly, it would be very difficult for us to convince the court in these on these technical issues. So we can adopt these simple procedures which are more easy to adopt and more easy to prove in the court.
Yes.
G. Anyone else?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
If a person A has sent an email to person B, and in that email he has sent an attachment, and that matter gets referred to the court, and the person B now comes before the court and he says that the attachment is different, that I have not received this attachment, or that attachment is forged. So is this a possible scenario, sir?
No, it is not a possible scenario. So you can, the best way, there are multiple ways to do that. Number one, if it is in Outlook Express, you can prove by getting the forensic done. If it is into a webmail account, you can always open the webmail account before the court and can show what is the original attachment. Because if you have sent some attachment, that cannot be altered during the transit. So there is a presumption for that also under section 88A. So even if you will explain that this is the email attachment I have sent, the court will presume that the same mail attachment has been received by the party. So there is no issue with that.
Okay, so we can refer section 88A.
88. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? So again, on next session, we are going to have a session on the expert testimony, where I'm going to discuss that if a person is coming as an expert in the court, what compliances, what thing he need to comply to prove particular forensic opinion. And in other way, if you are an advocate, you will be also be able to know that whether the opposite person has given a proper forensic report or not, how to prove the forensic report and how to check. So if you are a police officer, you also keep in mind that when you are sending a letter, forwarding letter, what things you need to keep in mind that must be included by the forensic expert into his opinion, so that you will be in a position to convince the court. So no question. So then we can wind up session. And again, I thanks all of you to be with me.
Sir, sorry to disturb you. Sir, I have a question in relation with the last webinar you conducted about WhatsApp and SMS.
Yes.
Sir, can I ask it here, if you
Uh-huh.
permit? Sir, for example, if there is a matter of husband and wife, where husband is involved in an extramarital affair and the wife opens the phone of his husband, takes the screenshot of WhatsApp chat of the lady which is in relationship with the husband, and sends it to herself. So how can she prove that WhatsApp screenshot which he has taken from the phone of husband and sent to herself on the WhatsApp?
See, first is the best way to the best. We should get the wife to prove two things. Number one, that the screenshot has not been tampered. Number two, the screenshot has been received from a particular mobile. These two things are mandatory, right? So the moment she is able to prove these two factors, then the burden will shift on the husband by virtue of section 65, clause B, small b of the Evidence Act, which says if the original is into the possession of the opposite party, then the burden of proof will shift from the opposite party. So in other words, if I receive something from you and I want to use against you, I need not show the original. I can prove with the secondary. Only the thing which I have to prove is that I have received that particular message from you. The moment I am able to prove this, the burden will shift on you to prove how it is being modified or altered.
Sir, but won't this attract privacy laws, as the wife has taken the phone of his husband unlocked and took the screenshot of WhatsApp chat?
Even under the privacy law, when you are using something in the court, so that is not hit by the privacy law. There is the exemption as far as the legal proceedings are concerned.
Thank you, sir.
Right. So thanks to all of you. And again, look forward to meet you on the next Saturday during our next webinar on expert testing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.